Hey, welcome back to Shaboom, the podcast all about and for baby boomers and the baby boomer generation. I'm your fellow baby boomer, Rick K. Jones, your host. You know, our generation is famous for something I call pivots. We're going to talk about pivots today. That's the word of the day. Pivots. Where did your life go a different direction? Our generation really has had lots and lots of pivots. I started out as a basketball player, later as a basketball coach, and we used to practice pivots. You would move your body legally in a way where you would show the ball one way and turn the other way, and you would have a pivot, and you would do lots and lots of basketball drills about pivots. For baby boomers, we've pivoted a lot. We've gone a lot of different directions in our lives: relationships, jobs, residences, places. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about those pivots in our lives. How many times have you pivoted in your life? Did you move around much as a child, or did you stay in one place? Did you go to college? Did you do postgraduate work? Have you been married, or been married maybe more than one time? Do you have kids? Do you have grandkids? All of these are moments of change, moments of pivots in our lives. I've had lots of pivots in my life, in my career. I started out as a teacher and a coach. Then I became a college coach. I became a college professor. I became a PR executive, and then a sports and entertainment marketing and corporate sponsorship executive. Now I'm a podcaster and a writer, among many, many other projects that I've had in my career. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather. I have physically moved 17 times. 17 times. St. Simon's Island, Swanee, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia, San Antonio, Texas, Atlanta, London, England, Dallas, and now in Charleston, South Carolina. I built 3 houses in my life. I published 2 books. I've hosted 3 podcast series. I've visited 50 states and 42 countries so far. My current website is rickkjones.com. This will tell you all about me, probably more than you want to know, but you can see a lot of content about my life and some of the projects that I've done. So how about you? How many pivots have you had? And how many more pivots will you have? Many of you are now retired. Many of you are contemplating a move. Hey, when I retire, and I'm not ready to retire right now, but when I retire, I've decided I'm not going to a nursing home. I'm going to a cruise ship. Now think about it. You just unpack your bag one time. You got a cabin, got 3 meals a day, maybe more, counting the midnight buffet. You got a doctor and a nurse. And once I kick the bucket, they can just throw me over and I'll be fish bait. So that's maybe why I call one of my agencies fish bait. But I plan to still pivot a lot. I still have a lot on my bucket list and a lot of things that I want to do, and I hope that you do too. Our playlist today is all about pivots. The song of the week is the Jimmy Buffett classic song about pivots, Changes in Latitude, Changes in Attitudes. Here's some other songs on our playlist. Song Changes by David Bowie, Fast Car, which is a great song about escaping and changing by Tracy Chapman, Landslide from Fleetwood Mac, Born to Run with Bruce Springsteen, and finally the Rolling Stones have a great song called Start Me Up. Great musical playlist today. Hey, my guest today knows a lot about pivots. First as a basketball player and a coach, then as an administrator and a president of an NFL team, and then a leader of a sports commission, and now a college professor. Whew. Boy, those are a lot of pivots. My guest is the multi-talented Danny Morrison. Let's welcome Danny to Shaboom. Danny, welcome to Shaboom.
Glad to be here.
Well, I ask everybody the same first question. Where were you reared, and who were some of the early influencers in your life?
Well, actually, I've been very fortunate throughout my life, and I was born in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. My dad was with the J.C. Penney Company, so we moved around the Carolinas. And, you know, one of the things you find out from moving is that there's good people everywhere. And so I was 2 years old to 5 years old in Spartanburg. We moved to Spartanburg, South Carolina. And then first grade through fifth grade in Greenville, South Carolina, fifth grade to ninth grade in Asheville, and then high school at Burlington Williams in Burlington, North Carolina. And I guess where you go to high school, you call home. So Burlington would be home for me, and you know, just a good fortune, great parents with great values. An older sister, a year older than me, and then a younger brother that came along 13 years. He was a surprise, but I think a wonderful surprise for the family and our parents. So I had a great childhood, wonderful experiences moving around the Carolinas. And then, of course, from there, uh, graduated from Wofford in 71 and looked like I was going to go to Wake Forest. I'd already paid my room deposit, had my roommate, and then all of a sudden I got a letter from the basketball, and I was going to try to walk on at Wake Forest, but I got a letter from the coach at Wofford. I knew Wofford was a good school, and back then, you know, your parents really weren't that involved in your college decisions like they are today. So I get a letter from the coach at Wofford, took the family Volkswagen, drove down there by myself. You could try out in those days because Wofford was NAIA. So I drive down there. I remember gas was 20 cents a gallon. It was normally 30 cents a gallon, but they were having a price war. So I sent
You know,
it up.
people don't remember that. They had gas wars
Oh
during
yeah.
that period of time to encourage you to drive more, to consume more gas, which I tell people that. I tell my children that. They look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, no, no, it was called a gas war. Really
Well,
was.
that's exactly what it was. And I drove to Spartanburg and filled up for $2 when 10 gallons for $2. That was pretty good. And so tried out. Uh, Wonderful school, Wofford. The coach was smart enough to not offer me a scholarship, but he did encourage me to come and that I could earn a scholarship there at Wofford. And so that's how I went to Wofford. Kind of crazy how, if you think about it. And so I changed, went to Wofford. It worked out great for me. Had a wonderful 4 years there. Had amazing teammates, and what a special impact it made on my life. In fact, you could argue the two people that I met in my very first semester of my freshman year had incredible impact on me. One, Joe Lassane, who was actually, I had him in Western Civ. He was the dean of the college, which for small colleges is like the provost. But he only taught one class, and I had him for Western Civ in the spring and the fall. Well, interestingly enough, the following year, Paul Hardin went to SMU as the president. He later became president at University of North Carolina, and they named Joe Lassane president of Wofford. He was 33 when he was named.
Wow.
So I had a good relationship with the president at Wofford, and I met him first semester of my freshman year. I also met Jerry Richardson first semester of my freshman year. And it's really uncanny to me how a 35-year-old, I guess he was around 35, but he was already a business icon in the Carolinas. Had started, as you know, with One Hardee's and built an amazing Spartan Food Systems along with Charlie Bradshaw. And so over the Thanksgiving holidays, he wanted, and I can't imagine thinking like this at 35. He and his wife Rosalind and the three children wanted us to have a family experience at Thanksgiving. The basketball players were the only kids on campus, so we were just there on campus by ourselves. And they invited us out to their house for a Thanksgiving. And so I met Jerry Richardson at that time. And lo and behold, some years later, Joe Lassine was a 28-year presidency at Wofford, and some 10 years after I graduated in 75, this was 85, he offers me the opportunity to come back to Wofford as either the basketball coach or the AD. I went the AD route. And then fast forward to some 2009, Jerry Richardson calls and offers me the opportunity to go to the Carolina Panthers. So pretty amazing. Two people, freshman year, first semester, had a credible impact on my life.
And all because you got in that Volkswagen and drove to Spartanburg and ended up going to Wofford. And it is interesting about this. Today's episode is about pivots. And I use the metaphor. You remember when we used to practice pivots? They don't practice pivots anymore. That's why they travel all the time.
I agree with you. We used to practice both regular pivots and reverse pivots, if you recall.
Exactly. But life is about pivots. And it's interesting about the pivots that these two men that you met so early in your freshman year became part of that. There's another great story. My wife has been on the board for a number of years of a place called the Epworth Children's Home. And again, Wofford is a good Methodist school. This is a charity that the Methodist congregation supports in South Carolina. It's in Columbia. The University of South Carolina football team hosts those kids every Thanksgiving.
That's fantastic.
Which I think is really great that the team does that, and Dawn Staley with the women's basketball team has done a lot of things with those kids too. But I'm not thinking at 35 I would have been mature enough to have even had the thought of inviting the team to come have Thanksgiving. But Jerry Richardson was a guy that was well ahead of his time in building what he built with Spartan Foods and that great business, but then in getting a franchise, an NFL franchise, to come to Charlotte. And so being around people like that, I think, really led to a lot of the pivots in your life.
Well, I remember that vividly, that going after the NFL franchise. So I was the AD at Wofford at the time. And in 1986, I think it was, as you know, Mr. Richardson did a lot of handwritten notes. And so he sent me a handwritten note that said, Danny, confidential, going after an NFL team for the Carolinas. Just thought you would like to know. Keep confidential. So I wrote him back and I said, not if, but when you get your team, we want to be in a position at Wofford to host the training camp, and we're going to start working on that. And so this was 1986, and he never in his wildest dreams did he think it would take till 1993. It was October 26, 1993, when it was announced that the newest franchise of the NFL would be the Carolina Panthers. And people forget that was a huge upset at the time. Nobody thought that the Carolinas was going to get an NFL franchise. And one thing about Mr. Richardson, he is laser focused. And when he is dialed in on something, so he worked on that incredibly hard for some 6 or 7 years. It came to fruition. During all that time, we researched every single training camp in America, and we knew what was involved in a training camp. We also knew that a training camp wouldn't come to Wofford if we didn't deserve it. And so we had to make sure that we put the pieces of the puzzle together so that we would have the infrastructure in place to host a training camp. And the city of Spartanburg got behind us. We had a number of donors that got behind us. And a lot of people think that the Panthers funded that training camp, but they didn't. They had their own financial issues with putting a stadium in Charlotte and also paying for the franchise. So it was so rewarding to see the Spartanburg community come together and the fundraising that went involved. We had a real estate appraiser who was great in the real estate world, a guy named Woody Willard, who we had to buy some 250 pieces of property without condemnation power, which is a monumental task. And Woody, with his great skill and time and effort and work, was able to couple and put all those 250 parcels together. So we were able to do 3 new practice fields and some other things that we needed to make it all happen. But it was a tight time frame. It was announced on October 26th of 93, and we had to have things in place for the training camp to be ready in 95. And if you recall, Rick, the Panthers played their first season at Clemson while the stadium was being
built. Yeah.
So the stadium opened up in Charlotte in 1996. They played in Clemson in 95, but they were in Wofford for training camp in 95. And it was just such a big deal for Wofford. It gave a lot of name recognition for Wofford. At the same time, we were making the move from NAIA to Division II, NCAA to Division I to the Southern Conference. So we had a lot of good things. You talk about pivots. There were so many pivots that also had the good fortune of the stars lining up. And all of that came together around the same time period.
Well, remember the old line, the harder I work, the luckier I get? I mean, the stars did line up, but y'all had a plan. I thought one of the most brilliant things she did was not call it the Charlotte Panthers, but call it the Carolina Panthers to be the team for both North and South Carolina. And then he backed it up by bringing the training camp to South Carolina while he was in North Carolina and built a fan base that really was throughout the whole Carolinas. And he did that by design. But I also think about how y'all utilized the changes and the things you built at Wofford that ultimately helped the university in so many ways. I mean, it was complementary of what you were trying to take the university. And like you said, moving from NAIA to Division II to Division I, you now had facilities that you could attract a different quality athlete to come wanting to play football or wanting to play basketball there.
Well, it really brought so much visibility. You and I have talked about this before, but risk and progress are complementary variables, and you got to step out there and take some risk. And I loved Joe Lassane is the reason he was a 28-year presidency, and he had a chance to go to bigger, better, but he loved planting the seed, watching it grow, and then actually see it come to fruition. And he always wanted us to take risk. In fact, he would say, hey, good, let's try it. Let's don't, obviously we're not going to do things we hadn't thought through, but let's take some risk. Something doesn't work out, no big deal. We'll punt and go for another day. So it's so fortunate to have a boss like that who really, really, really thought long-term, encouraged risk. You knew if something didn't work, he wasn't going to cut your knees out from under you. And therefore, it's like that guy taking that last shot. You can't be afraid to take the last shot. And the best leaders, and I've been so blessed to be around so many good leaders, but the best leaders, you don't play scared around the best leaders. They give you rope. They want you to take risks. They want you to think about different things. They want you to do some outlier type stuff. So it was a bold move at the time when this little bitty private liberal arts college decided to move in that direction. And again, anybody that has some success or whatever you do that has success, there is some good luck that goes along with it. But you can't be lucky if you're not good. and you have to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And it just worked out. It worked out really nice. And if you think about it, Rick, so so when we joined the Southern Conference, all of a sudden we're in the same conference with the Davidsons, the Furmans, Citadel, VMI, and then we also had a microcosm of higher education in America. We had the large publics like App State and Georgia Southern at the time, and East Tennessee and Chattanooga. And so we had the military schools, small private liberal arts colleges, and it just brought a lot of name recognition to Wofford. We we laugh. People do know how to say Wofford now. Back in my day when I was in college there, you got outside the area, they couldn't pronounce Wofford. It'd be Wooford or something like that. So
Yeah,
it's
well,
been a good thing.
you talk about leaders. The speed of the ship's always been determined by the speed of the captain. I mean, I really believe that, and that's so important. You know, you and I both live in Charleston now. We had a mayor for 40 years, Joe Riley, who, you know, was a young attorney who became a mayor and then served 10 4-year terms, which is unheard of. You talk about a risk taker. I mean, this was a Navy town, and they closed the Navy base. When you have your
Yeah.
number one economic generator go away because you had a very powerful senator in the state next to you in Sam Nunn who protected the bases in Georgia at the expense of the bases in South Carolina. But he was a visionary, and he took risk. And the proof's in the pudding now with Charleston. And I think the combination of what y'all did in Spartanburg with Wofford and what happened in Charleston has allowed this state to grow in such a way. And I think South Carolina is one of the most attractive states in the country right now for business, for people retiring, for people that are moving and doing some things. And it's been what I call that I-85 corridor and the coast that has really kind of driven that. But you were at Wofford for a long time. What made you leave?
Well, first of all, I want to talk on something you touched base on. Joe Riley, 40 years, continuity. People don't give continuity enough credit. Continuity may be the most underrated asset in any organization as long as people are always trying to get better. And Joe Riley was always trying to get better. If you're not trying to get better, then continuity is a disaster. But continuity, 40 years of Joe Riley and that kind of leadership, and it just you just keep building on things when you have that kind of continuity. And I really feel strongly about continuity. But anyway, so I had coached in high school for 5 years. I'd coached at Elon for 5 years. Thought I was going to be on a coaching track, basketball. And then get to Wofford as the AD administration, and it was interesting. I actually loved the administration area. We actually hired a better basketball coach at Wofford and a guy named Richard Johnson, who was fantastic. And we had such continuity there with Richard he end up becoming the AD, but he was there 30 some years. His assistant, Mike Young, then became the coach. So we had such stability there. We had an incredible football coach named Mike Ayers, who most would consider one of the top coaches in America, whatever level. He was that good. He was amazing. And 30 years, little bitty Wofford, winning Southern Conference championships when you got App State and Georgia Southern in there. People forget the year App went up and beat Michigan. A few weeks later, Wofford ended up beating App. So that was a great win for Wofford. So had was there for Wofford for a long, long time. Again, continuity. I ended up moving into the last 4 years. I was at AD for 12, and then the last 4 years, they created this uh, position in the office of the president called the senior vice president. And I guess the best way, they didn't call it this, but it was basically senior vice president for stuff. Uh, so uh, was involved in all the non-academic things. So from facilities to the athletics to enrollment to fundraising, uh, the whole gamut, which was a great learning experience for the whole to understand the inner workings of an entire college.
It was like getting a PhD, wasn't it? In a lot of ways. Yeah.
It was, yeah, no
Yeah.
question. And again, got exposed to a lot of things. I remember a summer of 93. I was still AD at the time, but this is where, again, Joe Littlesane's leadership and Roger Milliken was on our board, who was, as you know, one of the great business people of that era, and certainly one of the best. Most would consider him the textile person of the era as well. So they thought it would be a good idea for me to go to this intense program at Harvard for 5 weeks. And back then, we had 2 middle school children. You don't have a big staff at a small college like Wofford, so there's not a lot of folks in the different jobs. And it was a 5-week program in the summertime. I really wasn't all that excited about going, and but I knew it would be a good thing, and so I ended up going. It was a great experience. As you know, the way they teach there is the case study method. So in preparation for the case study method, we read and discussed a book called Reframing Organizations, which I actually use in some of my classes now. It's in like the eighth edition. That's how good a book it is. And basically it says that everything that you do, you got to look at it through 4 different lenses or 4 different frames. So you got to look at it through the structure frame. You got to look at it through the human resource, the people frame. You got to look at it through the political frame with the politics, and also the symbolic frame, which a lot of times people miss. And we used all those frames as we were looking through and analyzing these various case studies. And every one of these case studies, when something blew up, it blew up because leadership missed one of the frames. And so that was really a great experience, met people from all over the world, and really kind of broadened my whole way of thinking. So that was great. The senior vice president was really another terrific learning experience, and then had the opportunity to go to the Southern Conference as the commissioner. And that was another different way of looking at things, because when you're in a conference setting, you take all your emotion out of it when you got a conference game, because you don't really care who wins the game. What you do want is everything to go well, officiating great, all the other things, run great championships, try to be forward thinking in a lot of things. But I did find out on officiating, when you take emotion out of the deal, it's a lot better than I used to give it credit for. And so that was good to look at that from a different perspective, see the value of harmony and getting people working together that have varied interests, especially in the Southern Conference, like we talked about earlier, large, small, public, private, military. You have a lot of different agendas, and you have to be respectful of that. but you want them all to work in harmony, listen, and do what's best for the conference. And during that time period, our presidents and ADs, they were all seasoned, all really good, put their differences aside and did what was best for the conference. So that was a valuable 4.5 years.
And then TCU?
Yes, that was an interesting one. So I get a call from Dan Parker, Parker Agency down in Atlanta, and I never chased jobs. People would call. I always loved the job I had, and I thought that would be the last job. Quite frankly, I thought I'd be a high school basketball coach and teach geometry for some 40 years. And I could have been happy doing that because I don't think anybody makes more of a difference in young people than a high school coach. But at any rate, I get a call from Dan Parker, talks about the opening at TCU. It sounded incredible about TCU. I knew of TCU, but I didn't know a lot about TCU. Well, here's the irony. And you talk about pivots. Here's the irony. I just happened to be going to Atlanta in the next couple of days because I had meetings with Fox on some television. And it's Fox Sports South at the time. So we had some television meetings. So I said to Dan, well, let me just come by and visit in person. So I go, because I had not met Dan before. So I go by and meet Dan. Wow. It was easy to see why he was so good in his job. And we had a great couple-hour conversation. He then invites me to go to TCU for the interviews a week later. And the problem was we had softball tournament in Charleston at the time. And I said, I can't miss the softball tournament, but I can come after the tournament's over on a Sunday. So we're staying out at Hampton. It was a Sunday morning. I'm going to TCU after the championship game. I'm reading the paper. Back then, you had a paper, So I'm reading the paper at breakfast, and I happened to look up, and there were 3 kids, students, it looked like, that had TCU shirts on. And back then, you didn't see that many TCU shirts. And I thought, wow, that's weird. And then I get on the plane. They were having 8 candidates in Fort Worth, and go to Fort Worth. And I arrived there, and I walked the campus by myself for like 3 hours. I just wanted to get a feel for the place. And nobody knew who I was. I'm just walking. I talked to a few people, and I just am blown away with the quality of the place. The grounds were immaculate. Flowers all around the tennis facility. It looked like you were at a pristine country club. The whole place was just, I said, wow, this is a special place. And they had continuity too. They had hired a young chancellor, guy named Victor Buscini, probably the best chancellor in America, who just retired from TCU a year or so ago. So that tells you about continuity. So we have so Sunday night, I throw my change out on the dresser, getting ready to go to bed at the hotel, get up for interviews the next morning, and a quarter pops up. I didn't even know they had states on a quarter. And the quarter pops up with a Texas, the state on there. I said, man, TCU shirts that morning, Texas a quarter that night. So interviews go well the next morning, but then I head to Chicago because we had ESPN meetings. So I'm in Chicago on a Monday night. They call, say we're down to a few finalists. We'd like for your wife Peggy to come. So I call her. We meet in Fort Worth the next day. Next evening, interviews on Wednesday, and Thursday afternoon they name AD. That's how fast that went.
Wow.
So we loved it in Fort Worth. It was the first time for us out of the Carolinas.
Yeah. And Fort Worth is a neat town. People think Dallas has all the money. Fort Worth has all the money. And
money. Yeah.
I mean, right. I mean, old money, I like to say. Mr. Hogan, I got to know Ben Hogan, but, when I worked in the golf business, and, that was the home of the Ben Hogan Company, and the Colonial Golf Course is, one of the great places. And that's just within just a few miles away from that campus at TCU, which is spectacular. Fort Worth is a great town.
We absolutely loved it. And, I thought, I don't know why I thought this, but I thought, well, Texas people would probably be, well, you're not really from here, so maybe be a little standoffish. They're the absolute opposite. They wrap their arms around you. They want you to love Texas as much as they do. And they treated us like gold there. We hit there at a good time. When oil and gas is good in Texas, everything's good. We had, like I mentioned earlier, best chancellor in America, a great board. Our sports were doing really well. We had a terrific football coach in Gary Patterson, so we were top 10 many of those years. And so things were great, and I actually thought that would be my last job because I think it's one of the top AD jobs in the country.
But then it's kind of like what Coach Bryant said when he was at Texas A&M. He said, "Mama called," and that's when he went to Alabama. So now another pivot, a big pivot. Somebody that you'd met a long time ago makes the call, right?
Well, and I'd never thought about professional sports at all. Never thought about professional sports. And I get the call from Mr. Richardson, and in his typical self, it's not a long call, and it's not a flowery call. It's a pretty direct call. And the call goes like this: Danny, I think I got something that you'd be really, really interested in. Don't know if you could leave TCU, and I'll call you back in a couple of days. So I didn't even tell Peggy, my wife, about the call, and I'm thinking to myself, wonder what he's calling about. I did not think NFL at the time. I was thinking, well, maybe he's doing something else that might be of interest. So I did not think NFL. And so then he calls me, offers me the job to go to the Panthers as the president. And it was hard. It was a hard to leave TCU. We loved TCU, and they had treated us so well. And I would not have left TCU for another college job. But this was the opportunity to another new experience, learning experience, Rick, and opportunity to work with Mr. Richardson, who I had admired his incredible work over the years. And I knew a lot of people that had worked at Spartan Foods because they were also some of our really good supporters at Wofford. So I knew a lot about Spartan Foods, knew a lot about Mr. Richardson. I got to know him better when I was the AD because he was on our board. But again, he was working all the time, so it wasn't like I saw him all that much. But I always had great admiration for both he and his family. I watched firsthand the tireless work in putting the Panther organization together, and what a quality organization. And so to go there, and I'll tell you a couple of quick stories that just kind of reaffirm so much of the good of Mr. Richardson. But we were, I went there in '09. I think it was like 2010. We were working on, we needed to, we were doing the food vendors in-house for the whole Bank of America Stadium, which is great because you control it all. You control all the quality, but but you don't really have a bench. And if something were to happen to your leadership, you would be in a pretty tricky place. So we decided that we would go to one of the national firms. And so we had the RFP proposals, and we had the normal people that you would have in the normal firms, Aramark, Delaware North, Marriott, Levy, so forth and so forth. And I never will forget this statement from Mr. Richardson. He said, "We are not looking to squeeze every nickel out of our food vendor." He said, because they're going to throw a lot of money at you up front, because they'll throw you millions of dollars up front in order to revitalize and do some things with regard to your infrastructure in your kitchens and so forth. And so they'll put a lot.
He really knew the food system world.
No question, he knew it beautifully well. But this is carryover for everything, though. His comment was, "We do not want to squeeze every nickel out of our partner. Why would we do that? If we do that, they got to get their money somehow. So how are they going to get it? They're either going to get it by decreasing food quality, which is not good for us, or decrease in staffing, which is not good for our fans. Neither one's good for our fans." And Mr. Richardson had his motto was, "The most valuable member of our team is the fans, the MVPs." And we ought to always think that way. And so that was a great lesson in partnerships. And by the way, we both did very well with the partnership, and we grew the business, but we grew the business where both of us benefited, which is the way you should do with partnerships. The other story is we have a whole staff, coaches, everybody in the organization. And at the time, we also owned the stadium. So that included all of our stadium personnel, all of our Carolina Panther personnel, everybody in the organization. And this is one of the great statements. Mr. Richardson says, "I just want to remind everybody is we are following NFL rules, and there is no compromise on that. And in fact, not only are we following the rules, we are going to follow the spirit of the rules. We don't need anybody," his word, "we don't need anybody getting cutesy around here and trying to find some loophole." And that goes for you coaches too. We're not looking for some loophole in to take advantage of something. We're going to follow the rules. We're going to follow the spirit of the rules. That was powerful. That was a powerful moment that I remember well.
Strong integrity. Well, you get another pivot later and you get to do something fascinating. You get to go run a sports commission. Talk about that, because the job you did in Charlotte was amazing. I mean, Charlotte, you had infrastructure, you had a professional teams there and stuff, but really the organization of attracting events was not where it should have been, in my opinion, until you got there. And what a great opportunity. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, we came to the beach in 2017. So we live out at Sullivan's Island, right near Charleston, as you know. And I was just going to teach a couple of classes at the University of South Carolina. and then do a little consulting. But that's basically what that was the plan. And then, and and I again, I people thought I'd go crazy because in the sports world you're 7 days a week, so forth and so forth. So my friends thought when we came to the beach that I'd go crazy. I didn't go crazy 1 second, uh, because I stayed busy, but I was doing what on my schedule what I wanted to do. Um, and so uh, I I call it the luxury of time. You don't know what it's like until you have it. And so having the luxury of time, but then I get a call in 2019. I was on the board of the Charlotte Sports Foundation when I was with the Panthers, and I get a call. Will Webb, who did a fantastic job as the executive director and running the Belt Bowl at the time, got Parkinson's. So the board asked me if I would be interested in coming and doing that in Charlotte. And so I did. It was terrific. I've had so much fun with that because we had great young people. We were following in Will's footsteps where the foundation was solid, but we were basically a football entity only, where we were running a bowl game, the Belt Bowl, and then we would occasionally have a neutral site game, and then we would support the ACC football championship. So we had really talented young staff, and we just thought that we needed to diversify, and we needed to have number one, it's good for Charlotte because our mission is a pretty simple one: bring high-profile sporting events to Charlotte that have economic impact and add to the quality of life. So we wanted, but we felt like, well, we've got people. We ought to be looking at doing some different things, and so we started looking at an annual neutral site game, and some years we've had two. We got Clemson, Georgia early, which was a big stamp of approval, and we had App State and East Carolina that same weekend, so that was a great weekend for Charlotte. Then we started looking in, well, why don't we look at some basketball? And so we looked at starting. There were 4 schools. This was a Joe Castiglione idea. This is the value of listening. So Joe and I was in Columbia. Oklahoma was playing in the NCAA tournament. Joe and I go out to dinner, just the two of us chewing the fat. And Joe says, you know what, Danny, there are only 4 Jordan brand teams in America that have football and basketball. And the 4 at the time were Michigan, North Carolina, Florida, and Oklahoma. Yeah. Florida and Oklahoma. And since they've added UCLA both, but there were only 4. And Joe said, wouldn't it be neat if we could get together and have a basketball event with those 4 teams? And I said, yes, that would be great. And we'd love to host it in Charlotte, and we're going to start working on it. And Joe's been supportive throughout. He recognized that Charlotte was the right place rather than trying to move it around, because Michael Jordan at the time, owner of the Hornets and Spectrum Center, and we could have all 4 teams. Well, that was a great foray into men's basketball with those. That was a great event. 4 iconic brands. Then we said, we watched the NCAA tournament, and this was Caitlin Clark's junior year. And we said, wow, we ought to try to get a women's basketball event. And so we took a flyer on that. Debbie Antonelli was very helpful with us. Susan O'Malley was very helpful. She teaches with us at the University of South Carolina. And as you know, she was the first female president in pro sports with Bullets, Wizards, and then the Capitals as well. And they both helped us put together that very first event, and we had Caitlin Clark. We had like 16, 17,000, and we were paying very good guarantees that they weren't getting in the women's game at the time, Rick. So that was a big foray. We also had great help from Ally, who was a corporate partner, especially in women's sports. And we had Jeff Brown was the CEO at the time. Andrea Bremer was their marketing person. And let me tell you how long it took them to commit to that Caitlin Clark event. One day. How often do you get that? So we talked to both Jeff and Andrea, and they said, we'll get back with you soon. I didn't expect it to be the next day, and they said, we're in. So that was great. Then we said, and then we've continued to have that. As you know, we've got South Carolina as the anchor for the next 3 years. We got a doubleheader coming up this year. The following year, we got South Carolina and UConn, and then we got another. So we got 3 years with South Carolina as the anchor. Then we said, well, let's see what we can do with tennis. And so we needed to go big. And a guy named Max Eisenbud, who's IMG, probably the best person of all in tennis, and they certainly represent a lot of the great athletes in tennis. And Will Pitts, who's now the CEO of the Charlotte Sports Foundation, who's so talented. He and Max work closely together, and we're able to get Carlos Alcaraz in, and Madison Keys and Sloane Stephens and Francis Tiafoe, and that's been an annual event. Then recently, we bought the Charlotte Marathon, so we're moving into that space. This will be the first year we'll be running the Charlotte Marathon. We had gotten into the Met Mile, which was a cool event that we had started in the springtime. Savannah Bananas, we worked on bringing them to Charlotte. 2 days sold out in Bank of America Stadium. So we really have diversified a lot. It's been important, especially in this kind of crazy time. You don't want to be isolated in one particular sport. So it's worked out well, and we got a great young staff.
Yeah, well, I want to commend you on that. You know, we ran our Dollar General tour around the country, and working with your team there, just some of the best people I know. You know, Will's as good as they come, and that's part of being a leader is bringing the next generation of leaders up so that you can be replaced and you don't miss a boat. There's a couple of themes came out of our talk today. One, you made every step of the process the only job. You weren't looking for a job. You had the best job, and every time you did that, but you had great opportunities to go learn and do something different. And the other thing is, Danny, every place you went, you left it better than where you started. And that's, I think, a tribute to you, but that's what we all hope to accomplish in life is wherever we, as we like to say, wherever we lay our head, we made the organization, the city, the people better. And that's important. And now in the I guess the fourth quarter, we're both in the fourth quarter now. I try to do the math every day to say, come on, Lord, make it halftime, but I'm afraid it's the fourth quarter. Teaching at South Carolina, it does two things for you. It keeps you around young people, but secondly, you have to stay contemporary. You have to continue to, because they'll spot a phony a mile off, but you've got all this wisdom with all these pivots over the years that you're now able to bring back to young people. Talk a little bit about that and how important that is.
Well, I will say this, you just nailed it. The nice thing about, first of all, it's a great program at the University of South Carolina, largest undergraduate program by far in America, 1,700 undergrads. There's not one even close. and then 100 graduate students and 20 some PhD students. It's a great program. They've done a great job of merging those on a tenure track that do a lot of the research and those that have been in the field, like the Susan O'Malley's and me and others, Paul Graham, who was with Hootie and the Blowfish, and a lot of different. So they've merged that well, the practical. And so the value of being at the University of South Carolina is being with young people, because it does. It keeps you current, and it keeps you up to date on the newest trends. And so I've really enjoyed that. It does keep you learning. And I talk a lot about brands, Rick, and you live that world all your life. But I did, when I was doing my PhD, and I was doing that when I was already working and didn't take any time off. I mean, that was a blur. But I did it on a lot of my dissertation was wrapped around branding. And I love the Young and Rubicam brand equity model because it's so simple. And it just simply says that brands are made up of 4 components: distinctive, relevant, people know about them, and they hold them in high esteem. So your brand strength, as you know better than anybody, how distinctive and relevant you are. Your brand stature, people know about you and hold you in high esteem. And then you move through these, you can actually graph the brand strength on the left-hand side, and then the brand stature, and you go through these 4 quadrants. You start off as a new brand. Hopefully you're a little distinctive. Then you move up in the upper left-hand corner where you're distinctive and relevant. So you got a great brand strength, which means you got a chance. You got a chance, unrealized potential. Now you just need to get people to know about you and hold you in high esteem. So you move over in that leadership quadrant. And when you get that upper right-hand corner, but what's scary? This is really scary. And we talk to our people all the time. Everywhere I've been since 93, I've talked about the 4 frames, and I've talked about brands. Because when you get to that leadership quadrant, expectations go up. And you're no longer looked at the same way. So you don't stay true to your brand, then you start eroding and you end up in that bottom quadrant. That's not a good place to be. People know about you, but they don't hold you in high esteem anymore. And so everywhere we've been, we've tried to stay true to that, keep getting better. Don't make stuff complicated. It's not that complicated. It's not hard, but hard work, harmony, teamwork, listen, respect. Those were our core values at the Panthers. And you get people on the same page, and then figuring out how to connect dots, because people do have to see how this impacts that, and how can you put the pieces of the puzzle together to come out with the best outcome. And the people that I've worked with over the years, they really have been amazing. We've had continuity every place. We haven't had much turnover at every place. And in fact, this is an important point. Anytime I took a new job, I didn't come in and say, I'm bringing in my people. I thought it's important that everybody in that organization, why would we not give them an opportunity to show? That didn't mean we didn't replace some people at some points along the way, but we didn't replace early. And what I found out, a lot of those people that were there were really good, really good people.
Exactly. And knew the territory. Yeah.
And they had institutional memory.
Yeah.
Which goes a long way.
It does. Well, Danny, you talk about branding. You're a great brand. I mean, you all the things you talked about a brand, you've done that, you've lived that, and now you're continuing to give back to people. You've had a lot of pivots,
A lot of pivots. Yeah.
but all of them have been great pivots. And the great news is, as a baby boomer, you're not done. I mean, you're still contributing. And the other thing I think is we don't realize till late in life maybe how many people we touched along the way and the great things they're doing, and then how many people they're going to touch. I call it the stitch, the quilt. I've always believed that when you get to heaven, the first thing God's going to show you is the quilt. And you're going to go, wow, I mean, I met that person that did that did this, that did that. That's the beauty, I think, of being in a leadership position. Listen, I can't thank you enough for being my guest today. You've been a great friend for a long time. I'm proud of you. I'm proud to know you. I'm proud to call you my friend. And but I know there's some more still in the tank as you're walking the beach of Sullivan's Island. There's going to be some more things that you're going to be doing.
Well, I appreciate all that, Rick, and certainly you've been a wonderful example to us all over the years. And I will say this: I don't know what it's like to work for a bad boss. How about this good fortune that every boss I had from high school all the way through, hey, they've not been great bosses. They've been off the chart bosses. Now that doesn't mean they were all cut out of the same cloth. They were all authentic. I love that old Seth Davis book where he did a study of all the coaches, and he said his 4 qualities that come through on the great coaches: not hard, persistence, peak, the acronym PEAK. Persistence, empathy, authentic, and they know their stuff. So I had bosses that had all of those qualities.
Well, I feel like the people that have worked for you over the years would say the same thing about you. Thank you, my friend, for being with us
Thank
today.
you, Rick. Enjoyed it. Take care. Bye-bye.
It's now time to take that walk down memory lane. In 2005, I was working for the National Association of Basketball Coaches. That's the trade association of all of the college coaches that was formed by Dr. Fogg Allen in 1922. And I worked for a guy named Jim Haney, who was a great leader. And I went to Jim and said, Jim, what have we done for the coaches that coached in the Final Four? The goal of every coach is to get to the Final Four. It's the road to the Final Four, get to the Final Four. That's a career-making culmination. And he said, well, we hadn't done anything. Well, I stole the idea from the Masters. The Masters, as you know, has this thing called the Past Champions Dinner on Tuesday night at the Masters each year, where the winner from the year before is the host and picks the menu. And the only people that come to that dinner are past champions. That's it. No guests, just past champions. And so I wanted to do something like that. So I formed this thing called the Final Four Coaches Club, and we did it first in 2006 in Indianapolis. And it turned out that the 2005 national champion winning coach was my friend Roy Williams. Roy was the first host, and he picked a low country boil, what we call frogmore stew here in Charleston, and that was our first meal. And we gave every coach a blue blazer, kind of like the Masters. We gave them a blue blazer with orange basketball lining on the inside and had the date of when they were in the Final Four. The buttons were shaped like basketballs. The only difference is if you won the championship, your buttons were gold. And if you didn't, they were silver. And I remember Billy Donovan, who had been to the Final Four and did not win, had gotten his coat. And later he called me and said, I want my gold buttons when he won the national championship. It was a spectacular night. We had over 60 coaches that had won, that had been in the Final Four. Some of the old ones that people had forgotten because John Wooden won 10 of them during that period. And so a lot of those coaches came back. Coach Wooden was there, Coach Smith, Coach Knight. I mean, so many great coaches. It was really, really good. Today, the Final Four Coaches Club still exists. It's a lunch on semifinal Saturday. just for those coaches that coached in the Final Four and a guest. I was their guest in 2023 in Houston, and it was a wonderful experience for me, a great trip down memory lane. It's now time to get back on the road with Rick. I was the basketball coach at Sewanee, and we went to play Tulane in 1982 down in New Orleans. And there was a Sewanee graduate named Elliot Loudermilk, who at that point also was a senior executive with the Sugar Bowl. And he hosted me down there and took me to dinner at a place called Pascal's Manali, one of my favorite restaurants in the world. Opened in 1913. They're famous for their barbecue shrimp. They've got amazing fried eggplant. That's what you want to start. Barbecue shrimp, fried eggplant to start. And then you're going to want to have veal piccata with pasta. It's a classic. Pascal's Manali. The more things change, the more they have to stay the same at this place. As good as it is can be. Pascal's Manali's, New Orleans, Louisiana, on the road with Rick. It's now time for the boom. I've told this story before, but it's worth telling again as we talk about pivoting or not pivoting. I was living in San Antonio running the first tour championship called the Nabisco Golf Championship back in 1987. And one night on the news, they interviewed a man on his 100th birthday. And the sweet young female interviewer said to him, "Well, Mr. Jackson, I bet you've seen a lot of changes over the years." And he said, "Yes, ma'am, I have, and I was against every one of them." Well, it's funny, but it's not funny, because you got to pivot in life. You have to change. You have to evolve, and that's the boom. It's now time for the last word. One of my heroes is Winston Churchill. And this is what he said about change and pivots. To improve is to change. To be perfect is to change often. Amen to that. I want to thank Danny Morrison for being my guest today, and to each of you for listening. We'll be back next week with another edition of Shaboom.